Aloha and welcome to Goddess Unleashed. This is Diane Vick, and on this episode, I'm excited to bring on another author from the Crappy to Happy series, Dr. Ann Worth. And I want Ann to introduce herself. She is so sweet. We were talking here for a few minutes. Let them know a little bit about yourself, Ann.
Well, first, Diane, let me tell you how much I appreciate this and how much I admire you. I've been watching some of your podcasts and looked at your course to take, and so thank you. It's a great honor to meet you. Well, I am a mom and a grandmom and a great grandmom, although I've never had any children of my own. And I've been a therapist for almost 50 years. And I just wrote my first book. So that's a lot about me. And I rescue doggies. And we have one here that may wake up and need to be held.
I love it all. And I think it's amazing that you worked up the courage to write your book. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's an amazing opportunity and a great gift to the world to share your story. I was looking at your website, which was a recent thing because you just published this book.
Yes.
And I love this catchphrase, call me worthy, unlocking a painful past for a glorious future. I believe everyone is worthy of that. And I tell people all the time how it's so important to find your worth and feel that love for yourself. Can you tell us about the story around that catchphrase?
Absolutely. As a child, we really can't give ourselves a sense of worthiness. It really comes from how we're treated. And my mom had very severe postpartum depression. And so I grew up feeling actually like there was something wrong with me, like I was unwanted. And that certainly doesn't make you feel worthy. And there were a lot of other circumstances that really made me feel there was something defective about me. And so I tried many things. I roamed the earth looking for something that would make me feel good and feel worthy. But it wasn't until I was 55 years old that I met God in the form of Jesus, and he called me worthy. And from that moment, I have never doubted that I am a precious child of the King. I'm a princess.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I think a lot of people feel that they lack that self-worth. And sometimes it could be a minor experience from their childhood. Sometimes it's a traumatic birth experience or something that happened later on in their childhood. Personally,
Yes.
with the trauma from mine, I realized that I had a lot of issues with self-worth. And in order to really become who I have become, it took me to unlock those secrets that were hiding and find my worth within to become a healer. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book, the one that you published, and your story?
Yes. May I hold it up? Here is my
Yes.
book, Call Me Worthy. There is one funny little part to this. Most people think that I titled the book Call Me Worthy because my name is Worth. But I changed my name legally to Worth. So it's not just Call Me Worth. I could not call myself worthy, although I tried by changing my name even when I was 35. But it was 20 years later until I felt it. So my book talks about all the ways, all the disasters and the mistakes we make trying to get someone to love us. And when we feel unlovable or we've had our hearts broken and been very disappointed, then sometimes, as I did, we turn to alcohol, prescription drugs, so many different things, status, money, education, all these things that I tried to give myself a sense of worth just failed. And the more I failed, the more hopeless I felt. I felt so hopeless that I attempted suicide twice. but here I am, happier than I've ever been in my life. It just gets better.
It's amazing that you got through those experiences and now you're sharing your story, because I think there's so many people that it ends up getting to that point that they seek these external things to try to fill this internal issue, which is our
Yeah.
own feelings that are impacting our outer world, but they're coming from in here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing that you found it.
Yes, and there were a lot of things along the way that helped me, but nothing really. I had a lock around my heart because I had been hurt so many times. I was not going to let anybody in. But what that means is you can't get out either. You've locked the world out, but you've locked yourself in. And so for me, it really took God. God's love was so profound that it just broke me open. It broke me. And I evolved like out of that broken shell as a new being. So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And we continue to evolve. Like in my section of the book, we put in a phrase in there. It's like peeling an onion. You start experiencing things in life and you peel away and you become a better
yes,
version of yourself each time.
yeah. And for me, it was kind of like an explosion. I think I'd probably been peeling the onion, and then we got down to the lock. And then that had to really be blown apart.
Well, I'm glad you did it because that brought you here, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, you've been a therapist for 40 years.
Well,
Do you
almost
feel
50. Almost
fit?
50. Yes.
Wow. How do you feel like your own traumas help you with your patients to really bring them to the next level?
I think that there is a real surge in the therapeutic community towards short-term therapy and to just deal with what the problem is and solution and 3 appointments and you're out the door. But what I have experienced in all these years is that there are wounds in every person, and that as long as we're putting band-aids over those wounds, that they don't heal. And so when I'm sitting in my office talking to a client, I see the little boy in them, or I see the little girl. I see the angry child having a tantrum. I see the sad child who doesn't feel loved. And so I think that it is of great benefit to go back and look at your history, to get your history straight, to have your feelings about it, and then to move toward forgiveness. I think that too often we try to forgive because it's the right thing to do, the Christian thing to do, but we don't even know what we're forgiving sometimes. So it really doesn't get forgiven. So I think there's a great benefit in looking at your history and facing your history and who it has made you, and to ask yourself, is this who I really was created to be? What if I had had healthy parents? I wonder how I would have been different. I often ask people to think about that, and it's pretty amazing. Well, I would have been doing this, which is very far away from what they're doing. But they never even had that thought. Well, what if I could have done what I wanted to do? Not what somebody told me I should do. I wonder who I would be. So it opens up some new horizons to consider.
It does. It definitely opens up ideas for them to now go back and rewrite the past, to
Yes,
create that forgiveness really with a deep foundation. Because to me, I
yes,
think what everything has come to in my practice and the clients that I work with, they come to me usually with physical symptoms, like things are already manifesting in their body, which what I always teach is there's a physical root, the physical stress that's happening, and the emotional. But the emotional is coming from that little girl or that little boy. And it takes some time for some people to want to get there, but really to peel away the pieces of that onion and get to that place of forgiveness to become who you want to be. You need to forgive that little child for the stuff that they didn't understand was happening to them.
Yes.
And then forgive the people that brought it on you.
One of the things that is dramatic about my book is I had a life-threatening illness. And constantly in my life, these terrible things happen. And every time something happened, I thought, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. Every time it turned out to be the best thing, Diane, because when I thought I was going to die, I realized that I was not right with God. And that fear drove me to seek God in a very different way than I ever had, and to seek deep, profound healing in a way I never had before. And so here I thought I was going to die and I got a new life. But I would have never gotten there if it hadn't been for that illness. I mean, everything that happened to me, like to have to say I was an alcoholic, I thought that was the worst thing that could ever, a woman, alcoholic, terrible, terrible, terrible. But I met the most loving, wonderful people. I had a support system I had never had in my life. So God can use anything and will use anything, including this pandemic. He is always working in the background to bring about some good out of everything. And you ask me, what gives me peace? That belief is what gives me peace. That there is a God, that he is loving, and that he wants what's best for us, that we are his children. And we know how we love our own children. It doesn't even compare to how he loves us.
That was beautiful. And I think most people that they begin to change, they reach this point, either a really severe illness or a rock bottom moment. For me, it was an illness as well. Like I've had several obstacles in my way that have brought me into these health crises, which made me shift things. But sometimes we got to reach those dark places in order to see that there is a better way to live.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things I say in my book is I walked in the dark, but when Jesus showed up, the light was, I mean, I really had a vision of Jesus, and the light was absolutely dazzling. And I had my eyes closed. When I opened my eyes, I expected everything to just be normal. But that light, I feel like I walk in his light every day, that he lights the path that I'm to follow.
I love how you speak of everything. I wrote here on my little notes that we want to talk about self-forgiveness, because I think self-forgiveness is really a huge part of what I teach, and it's essential to actually heal the body and the mind. Tell us how you found the power of forgiveness.
You know, we talked about going back, and I felt so ashamed of myself. I felt so ashamed that I had an abortion because I saw myself as unfit to be a mother. It was really not one of those things where I didn't want a child or it was an inconvenience. It was my fear of treating a child the way I was treated just prevented me from even being able to go there. So I did many things that I had a lot of shame about. And so when I began, as you say, peeling those layers and realizing what had happened to me, I realized that every response I made was a perfectly rational thing to do or to think. And so it's like, oh, well, that's just what a human being would do in that situation, or that's what a little child would think in that situation. And so, and this is even more important, I think, than self-forgiveness. as I was writing the book, I realized I had not completely forgiven my mother and my father. But in writing the book, God allowed me to see them through his eyes as children who were lost and who never found their way. And so it gave me such great compassion for them that I couldn't, I was so happy to forgive them. And so I guess that's also the answer when it comes to self-forgiveness. I had compassion for myself. I understood how I was grasping at anything that would give me relief. And so I guess compassion is the key to self-forgiveness.
I would have to agree that, yeah, you have to be compassionate towards that old version of you that made those mistakes, and then work on to become forgiving towards everything that happened in result of those
Yeah,
situations.
yeah. You know, the the things that happened to me, the abuse from my mother prevented me from having children. The abuse from my father prevented me ever having a good relationship with a man. So there was a lot to forgive because I felt robbed of two of the most meaningful things in life: to be loved and to be married and to have children. So, but you mentioned this before, you don't have to get married or have babies to have children, because I just keep adopting people as I meet them along the way. And then they consider me their mom, and then they have children, and then I'm the grandmom, and now I'm a great grandmother.
Wow, I remember reading that on your website. How does that work? Do they come to your house all the time, or?
Oh, absolutely. Most people that I have adopted, I have met when they were young. For example, I have a son in Russia who I met when he was aging out of the orphanage when I was in Russia. Well, we started a process for me to adopt him at a time when they closed the adoption. So I am his mother in all intents and purposes. We've never been able to get a visa for him to come here, but I go there. So I go to we FaceTime, we communicate almost every day. He is as much my son as if I gave birth to him. And that was 20 years ago. So now he's 35 and has a stepson, Leo. And so that's one whole family. But another family, well, I don't know how much time we've got, but what I essentially did, Diane, was I became my own mother. So I thought, okay, if I can become my mother, I can certainly become someone else's mother. So I had met a couple of young women who were profoundly abused. And so I became their mom. And I have been their mom since the 70s. And so as they married and had children, I'm the only mother their children have ever known. So I am really, honestly, their grandmother. And now I'm a great grandmother called Gigi.
That is so beautiful that you were able to become your own mother, and then it gave you that strength to then give that gift to others, even though they're not blood related, but you are absolutely their mother, and you're playing that role for them and giving them the love that they need. So that is so
30,
beautiful.
30 years. 30 years I've been their mom.
How many kids are in this?
Well, I have lost two children.
Okay.
I've lost a daughter to cancer, and I adopted a Sudanese man a number of years ago who was just too traumatized. He had been a child soldier. He had been wounded. He was Sudanese. could not read and write. This world was just too difficult for him, and he died of a tragic medical mistake while he was trying to sober up. So, but living, I have my oldest daughter and her two daughters and her two granddaughters and great granddaughters. And then I have a family that I met here in Dallas a number of years ago, 17 years ago. And they're kind of all it really happened with the kids. They started calling me Granny Annie. And so I just kind of adopted that whole family. So they're just around here and there. And then
maybe there'll be more.
And then the whole Sudanese community calls me Mama Ann. I have children named after me in the Sudanese community. We have a big refugee community here. And so I've been very involved with some of the families. And so it's so funny when one of the kids like breaks their arm or something, we go to the hospital and they're back with the child and I show up and they say, well, who are you? I said, I'm the grandmother. What? And so they have to come out and say, yes, this is Mama Ann. She needs to come back here and be with this baby. So we've had some pretty interesting, the pictures of my children are in the book. So you'll get to see some of my precious children.
I'm excited.
That's my dedication. The dedication of my book is to my adopted children. The greatest gift God ever gave me.
It's your purpose. They've given you, this light into your purpose, and you're changing the world.
Yeah.
Well, we have 3 minutes left. I love that you talked about the mother thing, because that brings into the next guest actually talks about that too. So make sure you stay tuned to listen to Lynn Riley's story.
Okay.
But I want Dr. Worth to give a little tidbit about her story in Crappy to Happy before we close it out.
Yes. That I mentioned that I had a vision of meeting Jesus, and it was in the most unlikely place. Anyway, I ended up in this place with a whole bunch of other people who needed a second chance with God, and I was cussing and snorting and crying, and I was so angry with God, and I had a vision, and that's what my chapter is about. And it's called Mercy. Because God showed me his great mercy.
That's a beautiful title. I love it. We're getting ready to wrap up. So just let them know how they can reach you, how to find your website. A lot of times what I tell you to do is actually spell it out because they're listening.
Okay.
So they can hear
it. It's Dr. Drannne Worth, WORTH, author.com. That's my website. And the name of my book is Call Me Worthy, and it is on Amazon.
I love how you're owning the author and you put it on your website.
I think that's author.
We definitely are authors, and I love bringing authors onto this show. And everyone has their own insight, but a lot of people agree that we have to find this, inner strength within ourselves. We gotta search for that forgiveness and let go of the past. So I'm really proud that I brought you on this episode and that we connected. It was so much fun.
So much. I'm very glad to meet you, Diane.
It was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being on my show. And everybody that's listening, please stay tuned for the second half, which is coming in a little while. This is Diane Vick. Aloha.